Hello there, friends, and welcome to the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Today, we are going to talk about big value in the wide receiver department this season and why you don't need to spend an early pick on a wide receiver. And also, the NFL schedules came out, so I'm going to tell you why you need to just completely ignore the strength of schedule ratings. Here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick coming at you from Santa Fe, New Mexico with the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Thanks for joining me today. And today we are going to talk about big value wide receivers for the upcoming fantasy season. You know, I've been saying all along that the wide receiver position is as deep as the ocean this year. You don't need to spend an early pick on a wide receiver, and the names I'm going to give you are definitely going to give you an edge in your draft. Spend those early picks on running backs instead. Grab these guys. They have tremendous upside relative to their draft position, and we'll be doing that in just a minute. But first, we've got great news this week, man. The NFL schedules came out, and I appreciate and love the optimism here that the league is going to start the season on time and everything's going to go as planned. They're just progressing as if the season is going to start on September 10th or whatever the first day of games is this year. I love it, and I want to see it come to pass, and I'm just happy that things are just progressing as we would expect, because we really need sports back in our life. It's just been a dearth, and they gotta do something. They gotta get something on the TV. It still hasn't happened. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of articles on the internet or whatever talking about the strength of schedule and who has the toughest schedule in the NFL and who has the easiest schedule in the NFL. I'm here to tell you that when it comes to fantasy football, strength of schedule has zero impact on my analysis of players. And I'll tell you why. Let's look at 2019. 2019, the strength of schedule ratings came out, and the following teams were ranked as having the easiest schedules in 2019. The Bengals, the Giants, the Jets, the Rams, the Patriots, and the Redskins. All right? Now, outside of the Pats and the Rams, these other teams were just bad teams. And because they were bad teams, they did bad. I mean, it didn't matter. And that's my overall philosophy. My philosophy when it comes to strength of schedule is good teams win with a tough schedule and bad teams lose with an easy schedule. Keep that in mind. And again, you really just don't need to pay attention to this at all. Last season, the Chiefs had the fifth toughest schedule. And lo and behold, they won the Super Bowl, okay? So get yourself players on good offenses and you'll be fine, okay? Also, other teams with tough schedules last year, Houston and Tennessee also had very tough schedules. I believe they were both top 7 in difficulty, and yet both of them made it to the playoffs. Unfortunately, they had to face the Chiefs, and so they didn't make it any farther than that. Anyway, like I said, ignore those strength of schedule ratings. Don't even bother when it comes to your analysis of players, because it has no impact on the team's performance. Just know good teams win with a tough schedule. Bad teams lose with an easy schedule. It's going to happen again this year. I guarantee it. So now going back to wide receivers again. As deep as the ocean, man. You absolutely do not need to spend an early pick on a wide receiver in 2020 because they just don't offer that much value, to tell you the truth. Now, last year was a horrible year for elite wide receivers. As I'm sure you know. I mean, if you didn't take Michael Thomas or Julio Jones as an elite wide receiver, chances are you were severely disappointed, and your team suffered as a result of any of those other wide receivers in the top 12 because of injuries, because of missed time, because of poor performance or slow starts or whatever. So, again, do you really want to take a chance on one of these elite options when there are other options available later which are very, very good and offer an immense amount of opportunity and upside relative to their draft position? And that's really what I'm looking for. Like I said, I am at the point where My top 3 picks are most likely going to be running backs. I'll take my first wide receiver in the 4th round or the 3rd round. But of my first 5 picks, I'm thinking of going 4 running backs, 1 wide receiver. Take my second wide receiver in the 6th or 7th. Take your tight end in the 6th or 7th. Okay, 8th, maybe take another running back, and then 9th or 10th, you can maybe choose another wide receiver. Maybe take your quarterback. That's a good time to take a quarterback. So that's kind of the strategy that I'm working with this year. And I tell you, your team is going to be much, much stronger if you go the route where you do not take an early wide receiver, an elite wide receiver, because I just don't think you need one this year. Now, of course, it also depends on how your league scores points. PPR, I might move to taking a wide receiver in the 2nd round, especially if I'm picking late in the 2nd round, and my 4th round pick is going to be late in the 4th round. So, you gotta consider that as well. But for the most part, man, I'm sticking with running back first 3 rounds and then a wide receiver. So here's some names, and these are guys that struggled last year. They, for one reason or another, something went wrong. And again, one of them was one of the elite wide receivers last year. This year he's been knocked down. But the first one is Adam Thielen, who is currently going at ADP number 42. So he's a middle 4th round pick. That is a super easy place to get him. And this year I have him projected with 120 targets, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, the first reason why I like Adam Thielen is just the fact that the competition for targets is lower now. Diggs is gone. And of course, we got Justin Jefferson coming on, and I think he's going to be very good. But Adam Thielen is going to be the primary target. He's the one that's been playing with Kirk Cousins for years now, has his trust. They understand each other. They've been productive together. And last year was just a bad year for Thielen. Injuries all over the place. Again, it was very common amongst the elite wide receivers last year. But before last year, the dude had never missed a game. So I am fully confident in his reliability, that this was just an off year. He's going to come back. He has a good opportunity to play 16 games. And, I think it also shows, as far as the team goes, that they had a vast amount of confidence in Adam Thielen when they traded away Diggs. So I'm looking at what everything is saying here. Now, obviously, the biggest knock to Adam Thielen is that it's a low volume pass offense, right? It's a running first offense. There's not a ton of volume. That does hurt. That does hurt. His consistency. That's what I mostly see is on low volume receivers. Their consistency is all over the place, and so obviously that's the biggest risk with Adam Thielen. But he's shown himself that he can be a high-end wide receiver 2 or low-end wide receiver 1. I think that's where he goes back to this year. So again, he's a great choice in the 4th round. I really, really like him. Now, next up, the other guy that I like is right at around the same time, and I got to say that I will probably end up taking this guy before I would take Adam Thielen, but I'd be happy with both, to tell you the truth. But my next guy is Robert Woods. And Robert Woods is currently sitting at ADP 46. So he is at the end of the 4th round. You might be able to get him in the early 5th round. That is amazing, man. I mean, that is just unbelievable value there. I have him projected with 127 targets for 1,037 yards and 5 touchdowns, plus around 16 carries for 100 yards and an additional touchdown. And I think the reason why Woods was knocked so far down this past year is because of his complete lack of touchdowns. He ended up last season with 2, and he had like 139 targets or something, really high target level. To only end up with 2 was kind of ridiculous. And so I definitely see a bounce back in the touchdown department this year. But as far as volume goes, you can't deny the volume. He was 8th in volume last year. And he ended up as the wide receiver 17. So had he gotten like 5 touchdowns, he would have been right on the 1-2 line for production. He would have been like the 12th, 13th, 14th receiver. So he is an amazingly good player, and he is currently the 21st wide receiver being selected. So he's basically being priced as a low-end RB2, and I just see his floor as a mid-level RB2 with RB1 with wide receiver 1 upside, not RB, wide receiver. So again, as far as my projections go, I have him as my wide receiver 9. I mean, he is the 9th most valuable wide receiver in the league right now, and that might be a little bit generous, but I think it's a pretty fair assessment. I mean, I think when you look at those projections I got for him, those are pretty fair. Those are something that he could absolutely do this year. And the fact that Brandon Cooks is no longer on that team, there's also an opportunity for him to increase his target share. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, Robert Woods, fantastic option. Very much like him. Now, when it comes to both Robert Woods and Adam Thielen, who do I like them better than at this point in the draft? And I got to say, there's some big names, man. I like them better than Juju Smith-Schuster. I like them better than Courtland Sutton. I like them better than Amari Cooper and Allen Robinson this year. So those are all guys that are going earlier than these two players. And I would much rather have either Thielen or Woods or both if I can get them. So my last wide receiver is another one that just gets no respect, and I just don't get why, because he's amazing. He was great last year, especially down the stretch. If you had him the second half of the season last year, he was unbelievable how productive he was. But it's Jarvis Landry, who is currently sitting at ADP number 69. Are you kidding? That's crazy. That is like that is a late 6th round pick. Again, you take Woods in the 4th, you take Landry in the 6th. You're great. You're in great shape. I currently have him projected with 122 targets, 980 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And I know that the Browns brought in Austin Hooper, and I know OBJ's still there, but it really, Landry has been playing with Baker Mayfield the longest, and they really do have a nice connection with one another. And last year, again, he was the wide receiver 15. He was the 15th best wide receiver. Now he's being selected as the 29th wide receiver. I don't understand why. And again, when it comes to the draft boards, man, don't try to make sense of them because you will drive yourself crazy. Just go with what it's telling you and take what you can get from it. And this is just one of those things where it's like, just take him. I mean, it's like there's no way his floor is a high-end flex. His floor is a 2. He's a wide receiver 2 all the way with wide receiver 1 upside. He was 9th in targets, so he's at about the same level of targets as Robert Woods. Of course, he doesn't have the rush yards. He doesn't do any running. But again, he's gonna get the volume. Take the volume. And so, anyway, let's see here. So, he's an absolute steal. And as a 6th round pick, just amazing bargain. If you can get him in the 7th, my God, just take him. I don't care what your strategy is or what your needs are. Just take him in the 7th. At worst, he's trade bait, right? You could trade him for someone. But I like Landry over players like Devontae Parker, DJ Chark, AJ Green. Absolutely take him over those players, and he is going to do just fine for your team. So that's really what you need, man. I mean, like I said, if I went through my draft and I had Woods and Landry as my wide receiver 1 and 2, I'd be totally fine with that. These guys are super reliable. They get high volume. That's all you can ask for in your players. And maybe they don't have the high-end upside that someone like Devontae Adams or DeAndre, or Hopkins or OBJ or those guys have. Maybe they don't have the high-end upside that those players do. But shoot, they have production. They have value at their draft position. You are going to be very happy if you take these players for your fantasy team. So anyway, that's about all the time that I have today. So thank you very much for watching. And so I hope you found this very helpful. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. Also, leave me a comment if you got any questions about these players or other players. I'm happy to talk to you about them. I'd love to get feedback as well. So thank you very much for watching. This is Jimmy Maverick coming at you. We will be doing another Fantasy Maverick podcast soon, so stay tuned for that, and have yourself a great weekend, everybody.